So we got some very major news today. Donald Trump, who is a master at destroying anything that's positive, has announced his next target, and that target is the American economy and your average American consumer. The White House confirmed that they're moving forward with their 25% tariffs on Canada, 25% tariffs on Mexico, and an additional 10% tariffs on China. Now, this just makes everything more expensive for Americans here at home, but Donald Trump and his administration doesn't care. This story is unraveling incredibly quickly. We have some new updates here. The Canadian Prime Minister just slammed Trump, so we're going to go through all of this right now and more. Let's just dive right in. So earlier today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked a question about these tariffs at the White House press briefing, and just take a look at her response.
Friends at Reuters are reporting that the president has made a decision on the Canada and Mexico tariffs, but that they won't actually be implemented until March 1st. I was wondering if you could confirm that and talk through some of the president's thinking there.
I saw that report and it is false. I was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
The president yesterday said that last night he was planning to discuss whether an exemption would be made on oil imports. Do you have any information on what decision he made there, or will there be exemptions at all offered under this?
I don't have an update or readout for you on the exemptions, but those tariffs will be for public consumption in about 24 hours tomorrow, so you can read them then.
Oh my God. I mean, these people have absolutely no goddamn idea what they're doing. I mean, these people who are running our country right now, this press secretary, this president, this administration have absolutely no idea, not a Scooby, as to what they're doing running this country right now. These tariffs, everybody knows this by now. These tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China are just going to make things more expensive for consumers here in the United States. These countries aren't paying them. We, the consumers, pay them. So this oil, the oil that this gentleman was just talking about, this reporter, we get a significant portion of the oil that we use here in the United States from Canada. So when you go and fill up your gas tomorrow or the next day, that oil, that gas is likely going to be significantly more expensive because of Donald Trump's tariffs. He's plunging us into economic chaos head first. This is going to be disastrous for the U.S. economy. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the Canadian Prime Minister just issued a response to Donald Trump's threat here. His guarantee of tariffs taking place tomorrow. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, said, quote, "No one on either side of the border wants to see American tariffs on Canadian goods. I met with our Canada-U.S. Council today. We're working hard to prevent these tariffs. But if the United States moves ahead, Canada's ready with a forceful and immediate response, aka a trade war." A trade war. That's what Justin Trudeau is talking about here. That's what Donald Trump is putting us into. A trade war with one of our biggest trading partners. That relationship that we've spent decades, centuries building up with Canada when it comes to just being general partners or on trade or working across our borders so that we can make our countries both better. That relationship is on the teetering of collapse. We're getting there just because Donald Trump wants to explore his pet projects. Now, not only will there be a trade war, not only do we know that things are going to become more expensive, but there are specific things that are going to become more expensive. And we know that because we can look at the trade between the United States and Canada. And the New York Times has a great article on how this is going to impact oil and gas, as I just spoke about. But here's this article from the New York Times I want to show you. Trump tariffs could hurt oil companies and raise gas prices. And this is a serious thing. Oil and gas companies in the United States are bracing for the possibility that Trump will thrust their businesses into disarray and drive up prices at the pump by imposing 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico. The United States is the world's largest oil producer, producer, but the country's refineries are designed to turn a mix of different types of oil into fuels like gasoline and diesel. Roughly 60% of the crude oil that the United States imports comes from Canada, and about 7% comes from Mexico. Many refineries are set up to use those particular imports and cannot easily switch to oil from other places. Our refineries are specifically set up for this type of oil, these imports from Canada and Mexico, and they're not able to switch over easily, and Donald Trump just one day just says, actually, let's make everything more expensive. Let's make it impossible, virtually, to import this oil if it's 25% more expensive. Analysts are not just sure how Mr. Trump's tariffs might ripple through oil markets and who would bear the added expenses. The cost may not be significant if the tariffs are in place only temporarily, or if the administration makes it easy for refiners to obtain waivers to keep buying Canadian or Mexican crude oil without paying extra. He has said that the tariffs will take effect on Sunday, though he has possibly made exemptions for it. But as we just heard from the White House press secretary, Donald Trump has not made a decision on that. As of today, the tariffs are meant to be going into effect in less than 24 hours, and Donald Trump has not made a decision on one of the biggest imports from Canada. What is this guy doing? Is he just sitting there on Twitter all day? Probably. And here's another thing. Here's how tariffs will broadly affect the United States and Canada, not just regarding oil. The tariffs Mr. Trump is promising, this is another article from the New York Times, the tariffs Mr. Trump is promising would most likely be met with retaliatory tariffs, as we just saw from Justin Trudeau, from Canada and Mexico, and would unravel closely integrated production lines and supply chains across North America. Just listen to this number, more than $1.5 trillion worth of items would be on the line. The total value of all goods traded between the United States, Canada, and the United States, United States and Canada and United States and Mexico. This is the 2023 total. Economists predict that the initial effect would be negative for all three nations, which are bound by a free trade agreement known as the USMCA, which, by the way, is a trade agreement that Donald Trump put into place. So if he's saying that these tariffs are needed because we're getting scammed by these countries, is he saying that his own trade agreement sucks? Because that's what it sounds like to me. The negative effect is tricky to translate into hard numbers. Not only is it unclear what items Mr. Trump would target and how Mexico and Canada would respond, but the consequences can shift over time, including a rise in inflation as goods become more expensive, loss of jobs, and a chill on spending as consumers worried about diminished incomes. And governments often intervene to lessen some of these negative effects. Canadian government officials have already said they would consider bailing out businesses and supporting workers who are most affected, but some industries would be swiftly disrupted. Agriculture, automobiles, and energy suppliers, pillars of all three economies, would be upended by blanket tariffs. That's what Donald Trump is suggesting that we, the United States, just do tomorrow. Just like that. February 1st, plunge our economy into chaos, plunge the economies of Mexico and Canada into chaos, and distance us further from our allies. Trump is doing what appears to be everything he can to hurt the United States, to make this country worse, to push us further from our allies. He wants to invade Greenland. He wants to invade Panama. He's putting tariffs on Canada and Mexico. He almost got us into a trade war with Colombia. He's threatening NATO. He's pulling out of global agreements like the Paris Climate Accord and the WHO. And again, attacking our closest trading partners, the partners that we do the most trade with. If you're a Trump supporter, there's no way in hell that you can look at this and still say, yep, this is great. This is dandy. Oh, I love what I'm seeing here. We are not to be too pessimistic, but screwed. I mean, if Donald Trump goes through with this, Canada and Mexico retaliate, and it's not temporary, it's long-term, we are in for a very, very rocky road. You know, Trump supporters were complaining about high prices during Biden. Just you wait. Just you wait. And I'll leave it there. I mean, this is crazy. I cannot believe that this guy is president. I will keep you updated if there's any major updates to this story or if the tariffs go into effect. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention that this story is happening right now. Like, all of this is unfolding in real time as I'm speaking to you. So listen, I'll leave the video there. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Please make sure to share this with your MAGA family members so maybe they can understand what's happening here, although I'm not banking on it. Also, drop a like on the video, comment, let me know what you think about all this. Subscribe to the channel. It helps. It goes an incredibly long way and helps me a lot. But I will leave it there. Thank you so much. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And hopefully these tariffs don't go into effect.